Back, and I wanted to discuss with you, and I know we've talked about hate groups, and we've profiled the hate groups, and we've profiled the different kinds of hate groups. I wanted to discuss with you why somebody would join a hate group. Why would somebody purposefully join a hate group? Well, let's see. I like Yoda, and if you remember episode 1, the Phantom Menace, I think it's called. I guess it was the fourth made, but the first movie. Yoda made a quote, he made a statement that said, "Fear breeds anger, anger breeds hate, and hate breeds suffering for everyone." Okay, so yeah, it was out of the Star Wars episode 1, The Phantom Menace. Hate is created because of fear from others, fear from outsiders, fear from people who are afraid of the future, are afraid of what's happening, they're afraid of what's going on. And this creates hate. So the Turner Diaries has been credited with being the Bible of hate, I guess. It was written by William Pierce under the alias of Andrew MacDonald. He was the leader of the neo-Nazi group, the White National Alliance. And I believe we've discussed the National Alliance in the past. It was published in 1978. And there were other books that were written by the Vanguard Press, like The Hunter, and we've discussed some of those others. But this book, the premise of this book is that they're the diaries of Earl Turner. He was a member of an underground white supremacist army, and it was an inside account of the Aryan Revolution that overturned the United States government in the near future. It's lurid, it's violent, it's apocalyptic, it's racist, it's anti-Semitic. The notable sequence that we find here is that Turner's guerrilla unit detonated a homemade bomb at the FBI headquarters, killing hundreds of people. This passage became, or was seen as, the foreshadowing and an inspiration to the Oklahoma City bomber Timothy McVeigh. It was believed that Timothy McVeigh wanted to start this race war that was discussed in the Turner Diaries. And he created this homemade bomb. And on the anniversary of the killing and the burning of the Branch Davidian complex in Waco, Timothy McVeigh went and blew up the Murrah Federal Building in an attempt to change the world, I guess you would call it. The timeline was, again, the book was written in 1978. The Turner Diaries began in 1993. Turner's last entry was right before his successful suicide bombing of the Pentagon in 1999. Aryan forces triumph, a new era begins, and by 2099, some 80 years from now, the narrator published the Turner Diaries, because in 2099, the United States is an Aryan nation, and all of this was started by Turner. So this particular book is of the utmost importance to the white supremacy movement. It is, like I said, it's the most widely read among, it says, the far right extremists, and that's what my slide says. But I am actually more along the lines of the belief that the white supremacy movement is far left. And I'll explain that maybe in a little bit. But hoping to bring about the Aryan uprising that's depicted in Pierce's novel, Robert Matthews, formerly a Pacific Northwest representative of Pierce's organization, William Pierce's organization, the Aryan Nation, helped found the 1980s white supremacy gang called the Order. Okay, and the Order members, who were mostly associates of the National Alliance and other Aryan nations, was convicted and sentenced to serious prison terms for their crimes, which included murders, robberies, counterfeiting, bank robbery, the bombing of a synagogue. They also killed a radio show host out of Milwaukee, I think it was. But you'll hear them talking about the overthrow of Zog, which is a Zionist occupational government. They don't believe that the United States has free elections. They don't believe that, and they, even since the 70s and the 80s, they believed that the government was controlled by a bunch of Jews, and a bunch of not just Jews, but Zionists. And according to these white supremacists, Zionists and anybody who supports Zion should be destroyed and killed. They oppose the creation of the nation of Israel. They oppose Judaism and anybody who calls themselves Jews. They believe that the Jews have infiltrated the banking system, the government system, media, the news, Hollywood, the university. And because there's Jews that are in all of these facets of life, that they've occupied the pure intentions of the real Israel, the true disciples of God, which would be the white supremacy movement. So why? Why do people start hating? Well, there's a feeling of hopelessness. And this feeling of hopelessness about the world, about their place in the world, and they don't see anything positive coming out of this. I'm going to make a prediction here that as we move through this election season, the media and everybody is telling us that Vice President Biden has won and he's the president-elect and he'll become the president in January. Okay. Well, regardless of which way this goes, there's a group of people led by Mark Levine and Dan Bongino and Donald Trump and Rudy Giuliani that are saying that there was a lot of fraud and there was a lot of different things that were involved within the election. So and I heard, I forgot, I was listening to Newsmax TV this morning, and the news commentator was talking about how everything that Trump has done over the last 4 years is going to be destroyed, and the names and the people that President-elect, I'll go ahead and do it myself, the people that Joe Biden is recommending to run the government are the same people that Trump swore to get rid of and to clean the swamp. So, I've heard a lot of people talking about how the swamp is just going to go right back to the way that it was before, and they seem quite hopeless. And this hopelessness of 72 million people could turn into hate, and it could turn into violence. We've already profiled the hate groups and how the hate groups, move through identification through violence and terrorism. So if you have this sense of hopelessness, like nothing is going to get better, it's going to help encourage you to hate that target that prevents your hope. Racism. Growing up with racist beliefs, you've learned them from your family. You've learned them, your grandfather was that way, your father was that way, and I am that way. It's just the way that life is. Violence. If there's a history of physical fights, bullying, or abuse at home or at school, you can learn to grow up to hate things. Paranoia, a fear of anything, but specifically for this, a fear of minority groups or any non-white people. Um, I know that's kind of suggesting that only whites can hate, and that's not accurate. So let's put a fear of other ethnic groups, whether, whatever that ethnic group is, whether it's black or white or Hispanic or Asian or Native American or Jewish or whatever, a fear of that. Even a fear of the end of the world, a fear of the coming tribulation will cause you to hate people. Terrorists, influenced by other groups of people and utilize various computer bulletin boards, terrorist publications, 8chan and 4chan and BitChan and BitChute, all of these places where terrorists and extremists congregate to spread the word. Then you have extreme religion, groups such as the Christian Identity. They promote neo-Nazi beliefs and a hatred of minority groups. Some groups call themselves Christians, like the Christian Identities, but their beliefs and teachings are not really compatible with Christianity or the gospel. You also have the Black Hebrew Israelites, who don't like the white Jews or the white people or the Christians, and La Raza Unida, which we've discussed and talked about. These are also hate groups. And there's Catholic groups that are extreme and lead to terrorist and hatred. Within the Jewish world, the group is called Kahani Kai. And Kahani Kai is a Jewish supremacy group, or they've been labeled as a Jewish supremacy group that's looking for the destruction of the Arab world. And then you've got ISIS and the Islamic State and the Jihad. All promote a hatred against others. And then there's also just family history. Sometimes you have a family history and involvement of hate groups. It's hereditary. So what are some of the theories behind joining hate groups? The first is deprivation theory. Okay, and there's a chart there, and you guys can study the chart on your own as you go along. But it's the interpersonal social bonds. It investigates the level of bonding between people and the amount of social learning that's involved within that bonding. It comes off of social control theory. Okay, well, it's part of social control theory. The results showed that the greater likelihood of successfully recruiting individuals into the hate group is if contact was made in person or on the phone, rather than other various forms of social media. Okay, skinheads go to great lengths to recruit disenfranchised kids, kids that who will be drawn into their world because they defend them. It's just like getting into the gangs, like we mentioned before. People are attracted to the skinheads because the skinheads will protect you. Enemy. Enemy comes from the society that can result in the formation of subcultures. Robert Merton talked about enemy. Enemy was first brought to us by Auguste Comte, but Robert Merton is given credit for anime. These subcultures arise in response to the frustration from or of the members and their inability to reach certain cultural statuses. If you're unable to achieve what you want to achieve, you're going to create or form a subculture. This subculture, a lot of times, is going to be a hate group. And the hate groups use this frustration to push propaganda. If you join us, we can overcome this inequality. Okay. I'm going to throw Black Lives Matter under the bus here because they have this form of propaganda that we need to unite as a group of people to overcome the white supremacy. So if you join us, we'll overcome the oppression and the inequality that we find with the use of force and how the police forces and law enforcement oppress people of color. Okay. They use these propagandas and these narratives and these stories to get people to understand. They find people who are also frustrated. They feel alone. They feel oppressed. And then this turns into a hate group. And this is what happened with BLM. BLM qualifies as a hate group because of the way they go about and the way that they're building their society. And now that anybody who's white, male, heterosexual is evil. And the white, male, heterosexual is targeted for violence or other things. Okay. So the next level, or the next step, is called the perceptual contrast effect. Okay. What this does is it establishes a link between the other race effect that's implicit in racial biases, them and they. Okay. The racial bias is comprised of both social and perceptual components. In conjunction with the measured social biases for unfamiliar faces, for belonging to different racial groups. Okay, and I discussed this last time I was talking about hate groups. When you go into a restaurant or you go into a cafeteria, you're going to sit down at a table with people that you really don't know. You tend to look for people who are similar to yourself. They have your same skin color. They have your same hair color. They have your same hair type. They are perceived as one of you and somebody that you can trust. And I recommended, I challenged you guys to observe this next time you go to the chow hall or you go to the dining hall here on campus, if they ever open it again. This effect also reduces the socio-cognitive implicit to racial bias. Okay? Because of this perpetual contrast effect is why people will cross the street when they see people of different races, because they're afraid of them, because they are different. Okay? These findings suggest that implicit racial bias are multifaceted. They include malleable perceptual skills that can be modified with relatively little training. Okay. The next is differential association theory. Differential association theory comes to us from Edwin Sutherland, and it is a suggestion that criminal behavior is learned. It is learned through interactions with other people and through a process of communication. The people that we respect, the people that we look up to, we're going to emulate. Okay? And emulation is the best form of flattery, okay? Because people want to imitate personal groups. And this not only includes the techniques of committing crimes, but the motives, the relationships, and the attitudes. They all become a whole bunch of mini-me's as they go about. Differential associations can vary in frequency and duration and priority. Edwin Sutherland came up with 9 points. I suggest that you go find the 9 points of differential association. I'm sure that Dr. Kickbush discussed them in the theories class. Okay, so the learning process involves the same mechanisms whether the person is learning criminality or conformity or hate. And differential association theory is associated with imitating those people that we look up to. Pressure techniques or the persuasion techniques. The foot in the door technique is a theory of social psychology that holds that a person will be more likely to accept or accede or concede to a request if he or she has previously had agreed to a smaller related request. Okay, I'm going to get my foot in the door. Hey, can you go do this for me? Okay, and this is one of the biggest problems that we found within the prison system. Okay, you know, an inmate will get you to do them a favor, and then those favors get bigger and bigger and bigger until you're breaking the law and bringing contraband into the prison. This is a very interesting effect. Okay, so the lowball technique is a technique that's used wherein compliance is gained by not telling the person the whole story. Okay, I'm going to get you to, I'm going to tell you the good things. I'm not going to tell you about the bad things, just the good things. I'm going to tell you, you know, this a little bit here and a little bit there, and I'm not going to give you the whole story till it's too late. Once you're involved, once you're hooked, we switch it up, okay? And then we include the rest of the story. Okay, this will include links to sites such as the League of the South and the Holocaust denial sites. They appear scholarly, but in reality, that can be a first step towards indoctrinating people. Okay, just because a person has a PhD at the end of their name doesn't mean that they are academics, and it doesn't mean that the research that they have come up with is factually based. Okay. Even David Duke has a PhD. Okay. And then he writes research projects, and he does research projects. And because he's a PhD, people give him additional stock, okay, additional credit or merit or respect because of those three letters behind their name. And those three letters behind their names is very important. You know, I have those three letters. I'm published. Okay. Do other people agree with me? Well, I have over 10,000 citations where people have used my research in their papers over 10,000 times in 12 years. You just need to find out who those PhDs are. Okay, cognitive dissonance. And this is a problem that I think that we've been seeing for the last couple of years. And cognitive dissonance is a necessary element when changing one's self-perception. If the changed perception conflicts with the original beliefs, it's called cognitive dissonance. And it occurs when a person holds two views that are in complete conflict with each other. Okay? The biggest cognitive dissonance that I recognize right now is that for the last 4 years, we've heard about how international and foreign countries have interfered with our elections and forced an election result that the people didn't want. Okay? And for 4 years, we were trying to get rid of President Trump because of this election fraud that was going on. Now that Joe Biden has won the election, all these same people that for the last 4 years have been trying to discredit President Trump are saying there's no election fraud. There's no such thing as election fraud. There's no way a foreign country could get involved with the election. This is cognitive dissonance. This is having two views that are in complete conflict with each other. Okay. And we can start doing these same things. We introduce these things when it comes to racism. These groups will structure their websites to make them appear more likable and less extreme. They'll change the words, they'll change the vocabulary to bring in people who aren't solid in their beliefs and their understandings. They're most likely to be susceptible to this technique are those with low self-esteem or values that, while mainstream, remain closer to the extremists themselves. Okay, the door in the face technique is demonstrated when somebody initially is asked to perform a large request and then is asked to perform a smaller one after that. The peak technique, it's to pique your interest. I'm going to give you a few different facts. I'm going to tell you a few different things, and I'm going to arouse your interest into something unusual. Okay, I'm going to make then I'm going to turn around, I'm going to make a novel request that creates a surprise. It's going to break you out of your realm of comfort. Okay? It's going to force you to pay attention to what I'm asking you to do. Ask you to think further about the request in a central processing fashion. The novelty of the request piques their interest, and then I've got them. But that's not all. Nope, that's not all. Let me tell you more. A rather large request is made, followed by offering of incentives. Okay, so the NRA does this all the time. Now, if you join, I'm going to give you this bag. If you join, you're going to get this. But hey, not all, or the TV commercials. I'm going to cut off, just 4 payments of $19.99, and you can have this cutlery set. But that's not it. That's not all. If you order in the next 20 minutes, we'll give you 2 of these cutlery sets for the same price, the same cost. But that's not all. If you order within the next 20 minutes, we'll cut the payments in half. You, instead of 4 payments of $19.99, you'll only have 2 payments of $19.99, and this can be spread out over 2 months. That's not all. We'll also give you this knife sharpener. We'll also give you this. We'll also give you that. Okay. When offering or conceding something to somebody, rather than giving it to them as a final item, you give it to them in incremental pieces. You don't want to give them all of the information at one time, because it's going to produce what's known as information overload. Information overload will just confuse the individual, and you won't be able to control the narrative, and you're going to lose the narrative. So you give it little bits at a time, a little bit, and a little bit, and a little bit. This allows the individual to grab an understanding, or to take away an understanding of the different stages, or the understanding of all of the information that you're trying to give them. Okay, any questions? Well, I am finished with this particular lecture. I'll get it posted up here in a little bit, and hopefully we'll have another one shortly. Thank you very much, and I'll see you next time.